Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all of you who are joining us here at the Oriental Hotel Kobe and to everyone tuning in from all over the world. Thank you for your patience and apologies for the delay as we are experiencing a technical issue. My name is Silka from ERIA's Communications Department, and it is my pleasure to be your MC today. Welcome to the East Asia Summit Hydrogen Workshop, co-hosted by the Economic Research Institute for ASEAN and East Asia area and the Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, METI Japan. For the guests who are here in this room, you can find a barcode on your desk that links to the agenda and presentation materials. Please scan the barcode to access these documents. For the guests who are joining us online, please click on the link that is shared in the chat box. Carbon neutrality has become a globally relevant issue since COP26, and hydrogen is highlighted as an important zero-emission technology in the East Asia Summit region. The workshop today will focus on hydrogen demand and production potential in the EAS region in comparison to the global situation and outlook of hydrogen. Today, we have a lineup of respected and prominent speakers from across the region. So, without further ado, allow me to welcome Ms. Hino Yukari, the Director of the Advanced Energy Systems and Structure Division, Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Department, Agency for Natural Resources and Energy, Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, Japan. Ms. Hino, the floor is yours.
Hello everyone. Yukari Hino from Ministry of Economy, Trade and Industry, Japan. Hydrogen is one of carbon neutral technologies such as CCUS, DAX and DEX, and hydrogen can be substitution of heat demand using fossil fuels in power, industry, and transport sectors. Hydrogen can be produced from fossil fuels with CCUS, such as gasification of raw work or products from refinery process and reforming process of natural gas, so-called as blue hydrogen. Hydrogen can be also produced from electrolysis process using renewable electricity, so-called as green hydrogen. Thus, hydrogen supply potential will be abundant. The world energy market is in crisis due to the Ukraine crisis. At the same time, we must transition to clean energy to achieve carbon neutrality. Under these circumstances, the importance and roles of hydrogen are rapidly increasing, including from an energy security perspective. Hydrogen demand potential will be also huge due to substitution of fossil fuels in final energy consumption and power sectors. But hydrogen supply cost is still issue. METI Japan foresees the hydrogen supply cost at 30 yen 1 cubic meter by 2030 and 220 yen per cubic meter by 2040 to 50. There are two ways to reduce hydrogen supply cost. One is scale up of hydrogen demand, and the other is innovative technology development. Thus, government support on hydrogen production from developed countries such as Australia, Japan, and the United States will be indispensable. Some EAS countries have advantage to produce hydrogen due to lower hydrogen production cost, and some EAS countries have merits to use hydrogen due to decarbonization. Thus, setting up of hydrogen supply or value chain to connect hydrogen production countries and consumption countries in EAS region will be essential. In addition, hydrogen transport by ship will also need to make its cost down so that appropriate use of hydrogen transport models, which are MCH and liquid hydrogen, is crucial. In addition to hydrogen technology development, appropriate government policy on hydrogen will be also indispensable. In addition, appropriate hydrogen roadmaps should be formulated, which are divided into short, middle, and long terms. Japan formulated the world's first national hydrogen strategy and launched the Hydrogen Energy Minister meeting 5 years ago. Since then, countries have developed national hydrogen strategies, and 15 countries have developed or are developing strategies according to the IEA. I'm convinced that the current momentum surrounding hydrogen have been developed by the clear commitment and policies of many countries through their national hydrogen strategies. Role of regional hydrogen forums such as EAS Hydrogen Working Group formulated by ERIA, which consists of hydrogen production potential countries and consumption potential countries, will be useful for both countries through information sharing, technology transfer from developing countries to developing countries, and collaboration between hydrogen production and consumption countries. Knowledge sharing opportunities on hydrogen for developing countries will be conducted frequently to increase, connect, and common understanding on hydrogen energy applying country basis workshop, regional and international hydrogen conferences. Thank you so much. ありがとうございました。
Thank you, Ms. Hino, for the opening remarks. We will now continue to the first of 3 keynote speeches for today. I would like to welcome ERIA's Special Advisor on Energy Affairs, Mr. Kimura Shigeru. Mr. Kimura, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Shirikat, for your kind introductions, and very good morning to the from the not morning, it's good afternoon from Kobe, Japan, to the in-person participant and also the online participant. Thank you very much, everybody, for your participation to the this workshop. So this workshop is purpose is Hino-san mentioned about the increased common understandings and also the how to utilize the hydrogen in this region in order to achieve the carbon neutralities. So that today I'd like to introduce the hydrogen demand forecast in ASEAN regions. As you know, the ERIA, Economic Research Institute for the ASEAN and East Asia, update EAS Energy Outlook every 2 years, and the latest update has been done in 2021 to 2022. Then our outlook target year is 2050. Then methodology is econometrics approach. We apply the econometrics approach. It means energy demand is fully influenced by the economic activities. Then our outlook country, coverage is ASEAN 10 countries plus 7. 7 mean Australia, China, India, Japan, Korea, New Zealand, and United States. Then for the production of energy outlook, we produce the 2 scenarios, BAU and the APS. Then the APS include aggressive energy efficiency and the renewable target in until the year 2050. So that the purpose of this energy outlook work is assess effectiveness of the aggressive energy efficiency and renewable target in terms of the energy saving and the CO2 emission reduction effect, which has been set by the EAS 17 countries. So that we refer to the target, energy efficiency target, renewable target, and it has been setting by the set by the EAS 17 countries. Then in 2021 to 22, we produced the one more scenario, namely the LCET-CN. Stands for the low carbon energy transition, carbon neutrality, carbon neutral. So that is how ASEAN is achieve the carbon neutral by the 2050 or 2060s. So that, but this result is still preliminary and produced by the ERIA. So that this result is not reflect to the ASEAN countries' policy and current policy and current policies. So in order to achieve the carbon neutral, we need NZ3 technologies, new zero emission technologies, new zero emission technologies. Then one is ambitious energy efficiency promotion in LCLT, in LCET and CN. So that the APS include the energy efficiency, aggressive energy efficiency, but also low carbon scenario include more ambitious, more aggressive energy efficiency target. Then second one is reduce fossil fuel consumption or apply CCUS for fossil fuel combustion. So that in the final sectors, it consists of the industry, transport, residential, commercial sectors. Electrification from the agro sector is one of idea. So that now many final sectors consume fossil fuels, especially oil. But shift to the electricity, that is one of idea to achieve the carbon neutral. And also the change from the fossil fuel to clean fuel, such as the hydrogen. Now use the gas and oil for the combustion of the boilers and the furnace, but replaced by the hydrogen with no emit CO2, no emission of the CO2. The next one is power sectors. So what kind of the technologies can be available in the futures? First one is reduce thermal power generation, is shut down the coal power plant, everybody knows. Then increase thermal power generation with CCUS. We continue to use the coal power plant, but attach the captured CCS equipment so that we can reduce the about the 90% of the CO2 emissions. Then the third one is increase clean thermal power generation to combust the hydrogen or ammonia. So that is now we are fully depend on the coal and gas for power generation, but shift replaced by the ammonia and the hydrogen. So no emit CO2. Then also is very important. Increase renewable energy, both traditional and new types of energy, new type of the renewable energy. Traditional, what I mean, hydropower, the geothermal. The new type is solar PV and the wind. Then also increase nuclear power plant, nuclear power generation. It's one of the ideas. Then third one, I defined the carbon neutral. So carbon neutral definition is CO2 emission from the energy consumption. It's lower than the carbon offset by forest. That is our definition of the carbon neutral. So that our result, it still emit CO2. But if this amount is lower than the carbon offset by forest, it is carbon neutral. That is a definition of the carbon neutral of these studies. So I move on to the result. Firstly, I show you the final energy consumption in 2050. Then I compare the three scenarios, BAU, APS, and LCETs. So that energy consumption is decreased from the BAU and APS is about the 14%. And from the APS to the low carbon energy scenarios, that is 13%. But composition is quite different. BAU, APS still depend on the fossil fuel, coal, oil, gas, and electricity. But low carbon energy scenario is fossil fuel share is 40%, reduce from the 70% from the BAU and the APS. Then on the other hand, increase electricity and hydrogen. Then some new advanced use of the biomass. So that composition in the low carbon energy is quite different. So that I can say shift to the electricity and the hydrogen from the fossil fuel is fossil fuel consumption. So that is a very important message. And if we expect the carbon neutrality in the energy sectors, this kind of shifting, energy shift is very, very important. So that electrification and also the increase of the hydrogen. So next, I show you the power generations. Also, this is in 2015 data and also a comparison among the BAU, APS, and the LCETs. Then due to the energy efficiencies, electricity demand decrease about the 16% from the BAU to APS, energy efficiency effect. But LCET is shifting to the electrification. So that electricity demand increase, as I show you the final energy consumption. So that generation is increase about the 11% from BAU. But composition is also quite different. In terms of the APS scenarios, still depend on the fossil fuel about the 60% in the APS. BAU is almost 80%, but low carbon is less than 20%. But on the other hand, increase the coal power plant with CCS, gas power plant with CCS, and hydrogen, and wind, solar, renewable energies, hydropowers. So that is output from the output of the LCET. So reduce fossil fuel power generation systems, then shift to the low carbon, apply the CCS, hydrogen, and also the renewables. Then how about the hydrogen usage of the ASEAN members, country member state in the in 2050? So only 6 ASEAN countries plan to use hydrogen according to this energy outlook. Indonesia, Laos PDR, Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, and Vietnam. But usage is different. 5 countries plan to consume the hydrogen in final consumption sectors, which are industry and transport. But mainly transport consumption is highlighted. The only 1 country is plan to consume the hydrogen for power generation. That is Thailand. Thailand is, I guess, Thailand is fully depend on the gas power generations. So that in the transition period, mixing the hydrogen, the end of the day, this co-firing system is completely moved to change to the hydrogen power systems. That is a reason why some Thailand is use hydrogen for the power generations. But the other countries is basically considered to use hydrogen for final energy consumption, industry activities or transport activities. Then next, so I show you the fuel composition in the transport sectors. So that in transport sectors, there are many choices to achieve the carbon neutrality. Now, this majority is ICE, internal combustion engine consume the gasoline and diesel. But in 2050, increase electricity, increase hydrogen, and also increase the biofuels. So that 9 countries plan to shift from the IC to battery-basis electricity vehicles. But the conversion rate of the battery basis is diverse among the countries. So that some low PDR is 100% shift to the electric vehicles. But like Singapore is just around the more than 10%. So it is based on the each country's consideration of the hydrogen. Then for countries to plan to shift from the ICE to not only BEV but also the FCV. So that anyway, electrification, shifting to the EV is a basic trend. But some countries also introduce the FCV. For example, is Indonesia, Malaysia, and the Philippines, and the Vietnam. And one country has no plan to shift to BEV and FCV. So just Thailand is still continue to use the ICE and also the battery basis, biomass fuels like biofuels. Then for countries still use biofuel for transport activities. So that Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, and Thailand continuously use the biofuel until the 2050. Then hydrogen supply. So we look at the hydrogen demand. How about the hydrogen supply in 2050? Many of the ASEAN countries import hydrogen. So only 3 countries produce hydrogen domestically. On the other hand, 3 countries import hydrogen out of the country. So Indonesia, Laos, PDR, Vietnam, they produce hydrogen. But Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand, they import hydrogen. But that is current consideration of the hydrogen. And also 3 countries, Indonesia, Laos, PDR, Vietnam, they produce green hydrogen, applying the electrolysis technologies using the renewable energy electricity, geothermal in Indonesia, and hydropower in Laos, PDR, wind power in Vietnam. Then there are countries to have the advantage in terms of the hydrogen production. So that I think Laos, Indonesia, Vietnam some advantage in terms of the renewable energies. But Malaysia, Philippines, and Thailand maybe is better to import hydrogen compared to the production of hydrogen. But that's depend on the countries, and also this hydrogen supply condition will be changed in the future depending on the hydrogen trend or hydrogen development pathways. So as a result, CO2 emission is rapidly decreased to the low carbon energy transition. So APS policies is including the energy efficiency and renewable energies surely contribute to reduce CO2 emissions at 34% in 2050 from the BAU, but it does not achieve the carbon neutral. And LCET policies could contribute to the ASEAN for achieving carbon neutral in 2050, applying the existing NZT technologies such as the CCS and hydrogen. Then CO2 emission in low carbon energy transition in 2050 is around the less than 300 million carbon ton. But in 2090, ASEAN emit CO2 around the 430 million carbon ton. So that our result in 2050 is a low carbon scenario. It's much lower than the CO2 emission is much lower than the current level, 2019. Then next, I show you the historical transition of CO2 emission until 2050 by ASEAN countries. Then this one, the 2090 is index presentation using the 2090 is 100. So that we can classify to the three group of the ASEAN. First group is increase CO2 emission until 2040, and after that, reduce CO2 emission rapidly toward 2050. So that you can see the low PDR Cambodia's and also the Vietnam. Their CO2 emissions are increasing 2040, then rapidly decrease to the 2050, applying the CCS technologies. Then decrease CO2 emission gradually. So year by year, CO2 emission that is decreasing. That is Malaysia, Philippines, and Thailand. Then another third group is increase CO2 emission gradually. Brunei and Myanmar, but their consumption, CO2 emission is quite small when compared to the carbon offset by the forest. So that is carbon neutral. So that these two countries can increase CO2 emission continuously 2050, but carbon offset is much higher, so that now achieve the carbon neutral. So it's very strange. So and CO2 emission increasing, but still they achieve the carbon neutral. So that I summarize of the technologies to be applied by the ASEAN countries in final sectors and power sectors. So Brunei Darussalam, so energy efficiency and electrification is very important technologies. And then in power sector is just shift from coal to gas, because the basically Brunei itself operate the gas power generation, so that use only gas for power generation. But now it's there is a Chinese refinery company, namely Hengi, is start operation in Brunei Darussalam, then export petroleum product to the neighboring countries. Then in this case, Hengi refinery company to consume gas for power generation, so that just shift from coal to gas in Hengi refinery, it's achieve the carbon neutral. Cambodia, its electrification is very important, and also the coal to gas, shift coal power generation to the gas, and also apply the CCS and shift to the renewable energy, also increase the renewable energies. Indonesia is energy efficiency, reduce fossil fuel consumption, it's very important, and the shift and also the apply hydrogen and the electrification. And in the power sectors, the CCS is very important, and also the shift to the RE, solar PV and wind. So that I summarize the expected technologies in final sectors and the power sectors. Then these technologies is contribute to the carbon neutral. So I'd like to conclude my presentations. 7 ASEAN countries is assess consider the effectiveness of the CCS and the CCUS for achieving carbon neutrality until 2050 or after. Then, however, on the other hand, 6 ASEAN countries also assess the importance of hydrogen for achieving carbon neutral across the final energy consumption sectors, especially in industry and the transport sectors. And some of the ASEAN countries increase CO2 emission until 2040, and after that, decrease CO2 emission rapidly to 2050, applying the CCS technology, as I mentioned before. Then, so that it seems to be no low carbon energies. So that the low carbon energy transition is gradually reduce CO2 emission year by year until 2050. That is a low carbon energy transition, but increase CO2 2040 rapidly decrease. That is not carbon low carbon energy transition. So that maybe these countries pay attention also to the low carbon energy transition. So if so, co-firing of the hydrogen ammonia with thermal power plant, coal and gas, is appropriate pathway to increase the mixing rate during the low carbon energy transition period. So that I mentioned about the 3 countries like Cambodia, Laos, and Vietnam is maybe they are maybe considered hydrogen to mixing with gas powers and ammonia for the coal power plant, then gradually reduce CO2. That is also very one of very important policies, and end of the day, they apply the CCS and reduce the CO2. Due to the uncertainty on hydrogen, ASEAN countries have less interest on the hydrogen. So that following public announcement will be necessary. Progress of the technology development, both hydrogen supply and demand side, and clear government policies on hydrogen, and holding the conference, seminars, workshop of hydrogen at the regional and the international levels. So that I think it's, we should understand the correct information of the technology development, and also the government should have the clear policies for the hydrogen, and also the increase common understanding of hydrogen through the conference and workshop. That's my presentation. Thank you very much for your attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Kimura, for your remarks. Now I would like to invite Mr. Emmanuel Bianco, Program Officer in the International Renewable Energy Agency. Mr. Bianco, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and good afternoon, everyone. I'm very happy to be here to present the results of IRENA. So a bit of a background note. My name is Emmanuel Bianco. I'm a program officer in the International Renewable Energy Agency. And for who doesn't know, the IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, is an international organization, intergovernmental organization that assists policymakers in achieve the energy transition. And to do so, we conduct many researches on the topic of the energy transition, including the part that fall in the area of policies and geopolicies. And of course, because hydrogen became quite a topic in the last 2 years, also because Japan kickstarted this discussion in 2018, the topic of how hydrogen will change the geopolitical stances between countries became quite important for us to assess. So let's go back and see a bit of some numbers. Today, we consume around 87 megatons of hydrogen, mostly in refineries, but also in the chemical industry, particularly to do ammonia and methanol, and a small part in the steelmaking sector. These amount to around 10 exajoule, and all this hydrogen, let's say, is gray or black, meaning it's produced by either steam methane reforming or coal gasification without any CCS. There are a few pilot projects of both blue, meaning gray hydrogen with CCS, or green hydrogen. Green hydrogen meaning hydrogen produced with electrolysis fueled by renewable electricity. Now, in ERINA, we produce scenarios, of course, and it's called the 1.5 scenarios. It is introducing the World Energy Transition Outlook, or WITO, and we assess that the future demand of hydrogen will increase by more than 7 times, achieving 614 megatons by 2050, or 73 exajoule. And again, most of these demand will be met by most of this demand will be in the ammonia industry sectors, followed by transport and power generation. You may notice, of course, that refineries have no more role because the 1.5 scenario is a net zero scenario. Therefore, the use of oil should drastically decrease. For this demand, we foresee that all hydrogen will be low carbon, either blue or green, but mostly green, mostly produced from renewable electricity. And I would like to point out this 73 exajoule demand because it will become important later. I am a bit ashamed of showing this slide because it's quite old. It's the number of countries with a strategy published or announced in June 2022. Here you can see 45 countries with undergoing this process. But if I show this, the same figure updated to today, it will achieve 63 countries. Unfortunately, I don't have a more updated figure, but it represents how much interest there is for green hydrogen around the world. This is not a surprise because after the IPCC produced the 1.5 report, the special report for 1.5 degrees, it was clear that we need to achieve net zero by 2050 in order to avoid the climate catastrophe. In order to achieve net zero, we have to decarbonize the so-called hard-to-abate sectors, meaning steelmaking and basic chemical industry, in particular aviation and shipping. That 10% of our demand that cannot be directly electrified. Therefore, there is interest for this energy carrier, hydrogen, and therefore there is a larger amount of research now ongoing, in particular in the electrolysis sector. If you remember, I showed you that we need around 73 exajoule by 2050 to achieve net zero. And you can see that the technical potential around the world is huge, way overachieving this demand. But I would like you to look at the very first word. This is the technical potential. It's not the economic potential. It's not the political potential, meaning also what is achievable for policymakers to invest in certain areas. But it's clear from this figure that countries with land availability, variable renewable energy resources, and the land variable and water have the potential to produce a large amount of green hydrogen. While Europe and other potential importing countries have less of this potential. And you can also see that Southeast Asia, unfortunately, is not prospected to be a major producer of green hydrogen. It does not hold the same potential of Oceania or the Middle East area. But from this slide, you can see we could overlap these figures and see how much the countries are now already starting a trade agreements of hydrogen. They are kickstarting it. All these blue lines represent MOUs being signed between countries. The white dots are potential exporters, while the yellow dots are the potential importers. And you can see that those areas that have larger potential to produce green hydrogen are signing contracts with areas that have low potential and high industrial rate, mostly G7 countries. And you can see also that what we are seeing here is an initial oligopsony, meaning a market that is biased toward the demand side, meaning that there are few potential buyers that sets the market, that decide where to buy and how to buy. It's basically the opposite of the fossil fuel era, where we have an oligopoly. In a lighter shade of blue, Japan is notable because it already kickstarted some potential trade routes with a pilot project. You know this very well, from Oceania, Brunei, and Saudi Arabia. And it represents basically a trailblazer of the hydrogen sector. But I would like for you to keep in mind that the hydrogen sector, at least at the beginning, is characterized by these few buyers. And it means that these few buyers have a lot of power in deciding what kind of hydrogen, the quality, where, and how it will be produced. They can ask for specific hydrogen characteristics, and this also implies that they will set up the rules for certification. Now, we have seen before that a lot of countries are developing strategies, and in IRENA we assessed the G7 countries, and we assessed how hydrogen is presented in the strategies, basically the framing. Basically, how countries want to answer the question, why are we supporting hydrogen? And we can see some interesting trends. All countries support hydrogen for decarbonization. In some form, whenever the strategy was developed, there is a clear understanding that the climate catastrophe is impending and we need some solutions. But then we see how much the evolution of the historical evolution of these years that we are just living have changed how we see hydrogen. Japan has been the first country in developing a hydrogen strategy in the G7, and we can see that the focus is on energy diversification. But for countries that jumped on the hydrogen wave interest after the COVID-19, hydrogen is a solution for industrial policy making, is a solution for recovery of economic recovery. But then, after the Russian invasion of Ukraine, we have seen a shift in interest from COVID-19 recovery to energy security. Let's talk about, for example, the REPowerEU package in Europe that changed the initial strategy that was mostly for decarbonization and COVID-19 recovery to energy security, increasing the amount of hydrogen that will be produced and imported by 2030, accordingly to this plan. So we see how much hydrogen, the hydrogen market is influenced by policymakers and the elements in their agenda. What is interesting is that every step on this line represented an increase of interest toward hydrogen, and in particular toward green hydrogen, because it meets all these elements: diversification, COVID-19 recovery, because green hydrogen can be produced locally whenever you have not fossil fuel resources, energy security for the same reason, because it detaches us from fossil fuel dependency, and decarbonization, of course. And then there is the question, where do we want to consume hydrogen? Now, hydrogen, as was mentioned before, can be used in almost all our energy sector, but that does not mean that we should do it. There are certain areas where electrification is a best option, is a better option, and some solution where hydrogen is the only option. So in this graph, you can see on the y-axis the maturity of the hydrogen solution compared to the electricity solution. And on the x-axis, you can see how much centralized the demand is. This is important. The larger is the local demand for hydrogen, the more it makes sense to invest there, because it allows for increasing economies of scale and make hydrogen cheaper. Now, we can see that chemical refineries are the best solution and should be the highest priority for policymakers, accordingly to our analysis, followed by steel, international shipping, and long-haul aviation. Well, there are certain solutions where policymakers should focus more on the electricity solution, electricity-based solution. Heat pumps are available since 50 years at least for residential heating, and are much more mature and allow a very distributed generation of heating, and so on and so forth. You can see short-haul aviation, regional trucks, and European vehicles are in the electrification area. And this setup is mostly met by G7 countries. So let's say, for example, this graph. This is a new graph. I'm sorry for the quality of the figure, but it will be published very, very soon in COP28. We assessed how much priority is given to certain end users in the G7 strategies. And you can see that when we talk about hard-to-abate sectors, most of the G7 countries are aligned, and they are focusing on the petrochemical and steel sector and industry, shipping, and aviation. The bluer the bar, the higher the priority. There is some misalignment, but overall there is a clear vision of interest for these sectors. But when we look at distributed uses, that changes. Let's talk, for example, of the United States. In their recent strategy, they wrote that they do not want to pursue hydrogen for sectors where electrification can provide a cheaper solution. And therefore, they do not mention heating and fuel cells electric vehicles for private cars in the strategy. Instead, countries like Canada and the United Kingdom are more prone to invest in FCVs and power generation and residential heating, because they are producers of blue hydrogen, and they have to find a solution to use this hydrogen in their energy sector. It makes sense. They want to decarbonize their energy sector using all their resources. And Japan as well, because it uses hydrogen as a solution for energy diversification in its strategy. Therefore, it makes sense to invest in all shades of hydrogen and to use it as much as possible in every possible end uses. But we see here that there is different approaches. And if you remember the map before, you can see that those few importers, large importers, in particular in Europe, are not pursuing this solution, meaning that there may be a divergence in technology development due to this misalignment. Actually, we are writing a report on this for the G7 group, where we suggest for more communication and more exchanges and more alignment in order to kickstart an hydrogen sector that is decarbonized and is easier for potential exporters like the ASEAN countries to understand what kind of hydrogen will be needed worldwide, and not only for one market that may change its rules in the future. And to conclude, I would also like to remind you that we are living in an era where energy policies are changing a lot. Because of energy security and decarbonization issues, there is a resurgence of the so-called industrial policies. Those policies were shunned a bit between the 90s and the early 2000s because they were seen as a way to exert control of governments over industry. But we are seeing now a lot of policies and announcements for policies that will be in the area of industrial policies, meaning protectionist measures or measures to protect industries and to remain in their jurisdiction and to avoid carbon leakage and basically industry moving toward other areas of the world. In particular, Europe is thinking about import taxes based on carbon content. that will mean that no products will be competitive in Europe if it's not green. And this well, it's quite a revolution if you think about it, policy speaking, because it's a return of import taxes, but it's based on carbon content, meaning that any country will be able to trade with Europe if they will meet the thresholds that the EU will decide. It also means that it makes sense now to invest now in renewable energy solutions in order to be able to maintain a trade capabilities toward larger markets. Also, the US is considering a very similar approach with carbon content trade agreements. So, to conclude, we have seen that the hydrogen sector will be an initial oligopsony. Few importers, mostly G7, will set up the hydrogen trade from the onset. And this implies a large importance of certification, because to prove that your hydrogen meets the requirements of the importer, you will need to have a certified hydrogen, and means also that it's important to maintain a dialogue between exporters and importers to understand what kind of hydrogen will be accepted. It also means that it's much, much harder to cartelize hydrogen export. A potential importing country can set up trade routes with most of those countries in the global south with a large hydrogen potential, green hydrogen potential. And also foreseeing that this hydrogen will become cheaper and cheaper as renewable energy becomes cheaper. There is also the return of industrial policy making that evolved from initial COVID-19 recovery to energy security due to the Russian-Ukraine conflict. Decarbonization is a current frame, meaning that green industry is a thing now, and it's a solution to, it's a reason to why to protect a nascent industry like the green hydrogen one. Priorities for green hydrogen are mostly prospected for air to the decarbonized sector. And in particular, the countries that are foreseeing a larger use of green hydrogen, they want to use it mostly in these areas, also because it's more electricity provides a better solution for them. Distributed generation is targeted only by few large economies. And carbon border adjustment mechanism, import duties, industrial policies can be expected in Western markets to keep industry within national boundaries and to create trade agreements only with countries that are aligned with their vision of decarbonization. With this, I conclude. Thank you very much, and I'm very interested to hear what the conference will give us. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bianco, for your enlightening presentation. Our last keynote speech for the day will be delivered by Mr. Yoshida Hiroki, Deputy Director, Advanced Energy Systems and Structure Division, Energy Efficiency and Renewable Energy Department, Agency for Natural Resources and Energy, METI Japan. Mr. Yoshida, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Mic is okay. My name is Hiroki Yoshida from Hydrogen Fuel Cell Strategy Office of METI. I'm very pleased to be here and happy to share policy information and exchange knowledge and here. I'm going to make a presentation on Japan's vision and actions towards hydrogen economy. Japan is the first country to formulate a national hydrogen strategy in 2017. Prime Minister set 2050 carbon neutral declaration, and Japan positioned hydrogen as one of the priority areas in the green growth strategy in 2020. In addition, Japan is trying to expand the amount of hydrogen introduction and reduce hydrogen costs through the Green Innovation Fund project, the government budget project, and the private sector self-fund projects. Our target is shown bottom of this slide, focusing on volume and cost. As for volume, currently approximately 2 million ton hydrogen, target is 3 million ton by 2030, 20 million ton by 2050. As for cost, currently 100 Japanese yen per normal cubic meter, target is 30 Japanese yen per normal cubic by 2030, Japanese 20 yen normal cubic meter by 2050. The strategic energy plan revised in 2021, it shows updated power generation mix target toward 2030. It requires the improvement of more energy efficiency and renewable energy deployment. In addition, it allocates 1% for hydrogen and ammonia in 2030 power generation mix. This table shows rough roadmap for supply side and demand side. We are now developing international hydrogen supply chain and new domestic supply sources. So far, these are demonstration phases, but we are trying to make them as a commercial basis by 2030, and upscaling and diversification until 2050. Transportation sector continues to roll over leading hydrogen demand. We are now seeking to promote introduction of fuel cell trucks. We expect power generation sector will make large-scale demand, and it will contribute to hydrogen supply chain development, same to LNG. Hydrogen also has potential to decarbonize steel and chemical production processes and heat demand. We are now operating the liquefied hydrogen demonstration project between Japan and Australia. A liquefied hydrogen carrier completed the world first maritime transport of Australia to Japan in February 22, including a liquefied hydrogen loading and unloading. Followed by large-scale demonstration project aimed to commercialization by fiscal year 2029. MCH, methyl-cyclohexane, also has a potential as a hydrogen carrier. International hydrogen supply chain using MCH as a hydrogen carrier in the demonstration project was completed in June 2020 between Brunei and Japan, followed by a large-scale demonstration project aimed at commercialization by 2030. We are conducting large-scale electrolyzer demonstration project in Fukushima and Yamanashi, alkaline electrolyzer plant in Fukushima, PEM electrolyzer plant in Yamanashi. Currently, large demonstration projects are underway to further increase size, improve operation, and reduce cost. Currently, approximately 7,400 FCBs and 160 hydrogen refueling stations (HRS) are installed as of September 2022. Fukushima Prefecture and Toyota are preparing to start FC truck demonstration project, including refueling timing management. We are also starting to develop high-speed refueling protocol for heavy-duty vehicles. In addition, East Japan Railway Company, JR East, has started fuel cell train demonstration operation at their commercial line. Technology development and demonstration will be carried out in the field of large-scale thermal power generation, 500 MW class, and cogeneration 1 MW class for supplying heat and electricity. Japan will contribute to the world efforts to commercialize hydrogen power generation. To decarbonize the steel sector, hydrogen reductant steel making using hydrogen instead of carbon as a reductant is under technological development. Hydrogen is also expected to be used as a heat source as high temperature required in industry process. Projects using hydrogen as a heat sources are underway in diverse fields, including auto parts manufacturing, tire manufacturing, and coffee roasting. It is desirable to encourage the utilization of hydrogen in regions as a model. It is also better to have a demand and a supply area as close to each other as possible. By gathering knowledge, creating more model, and promoting the development of infrastructure in various regions, the social implementation of hydrogen can be efficiently promoted, and we will actively support the establishment of such models. Example 1 is large-scale use in port area. Example 2 is local production and consumption by using electrolyzer. In order to create the hydrogen implementation model, we are encouraging region, private company, and relevant bodies which have potential of hydrogen activities to start discussion, feasibility studies around this demonstration project and or actual implementation. Kind of regional model and hydrogen cluster are called Hydrogen Hub, Hydrogen Valley in Clean Energy Ministerial meeting. This is a snapshot of Fukushima. Fukushima Prefecture, located in north part of Japan, is one of the active prefecture for hydrogen. They have Fukushima Hydrogen Industry Academia Government Collaboration Committee in order to share progress of hydrogen projects and discuss how to develop local industry with hydrogen. As you know, NEDO is handling the demonstration project for large-scale electrolysis with renewable energy at the Fukushima Hydrogen Energy Research Field, FA2R. Shown left side. Fukushima Prefecture and Namie-tan are using hydrogen and fuel cell for their public facilities. This hydrogen comes from FA2R. Sumitomo Rubber Industries, a tire manufacturer, has started demonstration project for deployment of hydrogen boiler at their factory line. Denso, a car parts manufacturer, has started a demonstration project for using electrolyzer heating and hydrogen boiler in their production line. Iwatani and Somagas Group, gas provider, have started a feasibility study for blending hydrogen into their gas service. This is a snapshot of Yamanashi. Yamanashi Prefecture, located in the center of Japan, is another active prefecture for hydrogen. They have Yamanashi Hydrogen and Fuel Cell related to Industry Development Committee in order to share progress of hydrogen projects and to discuss how to develop local industry with hydrogen. Yamanashi Prefecture has developed renewable power plant and hydrogen technology many years. Yamanashi Prefecture started to develop a 60 megawatt class integrated electrolysis system and hydrogen boiler incorporated with Toray, Hitachi Zosen, Siemens Energy, Kaji Technology, and Miura. UCC Ueshima Coffee has started a demonstration project for hydrogen heat use at the factory in line incorporated with Yamanashi Prefecture, TEPCO Energy Partner, Toray, and Tomoe. Yamanashi Prefecture is not only doing R&D and demonstration project, but also established Yamanashi Hydrogen Company, YHC, with Toray and TEPCO Energy Partner to provide power to gas service as output and outcome of their project. In addition, Yamanashi University is doing hydrogen related to R&Ds, such as electrode catalyst for high performance, cost reduction, and associated hydrogen supply and utilization technology. HISAT provide human resource development service for hydrogen refueling station. METI established the new subcommittee for hydrogen policy in March. The subcommittee examined the way to expand the introduction of commercialization of hydrogen and ammonia, focusing the price differences with the existing fuel and state of infrastructure development. Prime Minister Kishida stated in his speech that he would take bold support measures regarding hydrogen policy. Japan launched the Hydrogen Minister Meeting, HMHEM, in 2018. We believe the Hydrogen Energy Minister meeting is the most ideal meeting for hydrogen-related ministers and the top executive to express and discuss direction to build a hydrogen society and future initiatives. METI and NEDO held the fifth hydrogen energy ministerial meeting in cooperation with the IEA as a part of Tokyo GX Week on September 26, 2022. As a result of the meeting, the chair released the chair's summary for accelerating and enlarging of Tokyo Statement of Global Action Agenda, including additional goals on the amount of renewable and low carbon hydrogen to be produced by 2030 of at least 90 million tons by 2030. That's it. Thank you very much for kind attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Yoshida, for your keynote speech. That marks the end of our first session, ladies and gentlemen. We will take a short break to rearrange the stage for the panel discussion session. We will resume the webinar shortly. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. Now we will continue with the panel discussion on issues and challenges towards hydrogen utilization, moderated by ERIA's energy economist, Dr. Aloysius Joko Purwanto. Dr. Joko, this session is yours.
Hello, good afternoon all, and probably a good morning to some of the participants that follow this event online. My name is Joko. I'm an energy economist from the Economic Institute for ASEAN and East Asia area, and here I'm the moderator of this session for the next 2 hours. So after we have heard a very interesting setting of the situation of the next plan or strategy of countries in the world as well as in Japan about how hydrogen will be used in the future. And we have also heard the outlook on the current situation, on the future situation of the supply and demand in the East Asia Summit countries, as well as the world situation. Now we will go to the other perspective. We will have in this session presentation and discussion between representative of 8 different countries, and we will have the opportunity to hear from the excellent speakers from these 8 different countries. We will have then 8 different situations, 8 different perspectives, but with one common strategy, but with one common goal, which is to start with to initiate with the hydrogen economy. We will have 8 speakers, and we will have for each of the speaker 5 minutes of presentations. So after the around 40 minutes of presentation, we will have the opportunity to have like 45 minutes of discussion, and then followed by question and answer. So allow me to briefly inform you the name and institutions of the 8 excellent speakers that we will have this afternoon. So the first one we will have from Australia, Ms. Rebecca Thompson. She is from the Hydrogen Strategy Team, Department of Climate Change, Energy and Environment and Water, Australia. The second panelist will be Mr. Syed Muhammad Faiz bin Syed Haji Fadilah. He is the second Special Duty Officer of the Renewable Energy Unit, Sustainable Energy Division, Department of Energy, Prime Minister's Office of Brunei Darussalam. The third panelist will be Dr. Zheng Liu. He is Deputy Director of Carbon Data and Carbon Assessment Research Center, Shanghai Advanced Research Institute, Chinese Academy of Sciences, China. The fourth will be from India. We will have Dr. Natarajan Rajalaxmi. She is professor from the Indian Institute of Technology, Dharwad, India. The fifth panelist will be Ms. Andrea Phoebe Misna. She is the director from the Directorate of Various New and Renewable Energy, Director General of New Renewable Energy and Energy Conservation of the Ministry of Energy and Mineral Resources, Indonesia. And then we will hear from Mr. Ohira Eiji from Japan. He is the Director General of Fuel Cell and Hydrogen Office, Advanced Battery and Hydrogen Technology Department. The New Energy and Industrial Technology Development Organization, NEDO Japan. The 7 panelists will be Mr. Khairul Anwar Mukhtar. He is a Senior Assistant Secretary from the Electricity Supply Planning, Policy and Planning of the Ministry of Energy and Natural Resources of Malaysia. And the last one will be from Australia. We will hear from Mr. Mark Pickup. From New Zealand, Mr. Mark Pickup. He is the Principal Policy Advisor, Energy Markets Policy, Energy and Resource Market Grants, Minister of Business, Innovation and Employment, MBIE, New Zealand. So now, before we go to the presentations, each presenter will have 5 minutes. I just would like to invite also participants that join by WebEx to raise questions using the Q&A part that you can find by clicking the 3 dots button. Normally, it is found at the bottom bar of the WebEx panel. Then there you can mention your name, your institution, and then the question, and also to whom you would like your question to be answered, by whom, and not to use a chat box. So I would like to invite the first panelist, Ms. Rebecca Thompson from Australia. Ms. Rebecca Thompson, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Should I share my screen with my presentation? Oh, it is there. Okay, thank you. All right. Thank you very much for the opportunity to present this afternoon. My name is Rebecca Thompson, and I'm the manager of the Hydrogen Strategy team at the Australian Department of Climate Change, Energy, the Environment and Water. As we've been discussing, hydrogen can play an essential role in the clean energy transition. It can help with the challenges of decarbonisation and reducing emissions, as well as energy security. There are enormous opportunities, but there are, of course, many challenges to overcome as well. Could we go to the next slide, please? The topic of this session is hydrogen utilisation, but of course Australia is positioning itself to be a major hydrogen supplier. So in my presentation, I'm going to talk sort of about some of the issues associated with hydrogen utilisation from a supplier perspective, I guess, and talk more broadly about some of the issues associated with scaling up the hydrogen industry, both in Australia and overseas. But as is depicted on this slide, Australia, it does have all of the major ingredients to be a major supplier. We have the renewable energy resources, the land, the carbon capture and storage resources, and also the proven track record as an energy supplier. So we're really well positioned to take advantage of this opportunity. If we go to the next slide. So the hydrogen industry in Australia is growing pretty well at the moment, and we have a pipeline of over 100 projects across the country. And these are not just hydrogen production projects, but they span the entire supply chain. So they include gas blending trials, transport trials, ammonia production, and export feasibility studies. We also have a number of large projects in the pipeline in Australia. There's at least 6 projects that of gigawatt scale that are proposed, but these have not really reached financial close yet. So yeah, so we have a lot in the pipeline, but at various stages of development. Onto the next slide, please. So in December last year, December 2021, we released the State of Hydrogen report, and this report is really a report card against how Australia is tracking against its national hydrogen strategy. And the report card basically said we're doing pretty well, and talked to the large number of projects in the pipeline that I mentioned on the previous slide. But it also highlighted common challenges. These particularly included building demand, there is a large production pipeline in Australia and both overseas, but offtake is lagging. And so I think there is a need to stimulate the demand and the utilisation side of the industry. Other challenges include reducing production costs, obviously, and this kind of goes hand in hand with, or presents a bit of a chicken and egg problem, I guess, with stimulating demand. You'll get the production cost down when there's an economy of scale, but you won't get the scale without the demand. Other common challenges are around infrastructure and also around some of the trade rules and regulations as well. Next slide, please. So Australian governments are undertaking a range of activities that support early industry growth and help address some of the barriers I just mentioned. There's a couple of key ones that I would like to focus on. The first is the development of a Guarantee of Origin scheme in Australia. So we've been working on this for a couple of years now, and we've been running a kind of trial phase this year. But this scheme will measure and track key attributes of hydrogen production and display this on a certificate. And this will give producers a mechanism to market the low emissions credentials of their product and consumers over the assurance of the hydrogen they're buying. And this is a really important mechanism to stimulate both domestic markets and international trade. International alignment on this scheme is particularly important to us. So we have been taking quite an active role through the International Partnership on Hydrogen and Fuel Cells in the Economy, or IPHE's Production Analysis Task Force, to develop common emissions accounting methodologies for hydrogen production. And this is a way that hopefully we can ensure some international kind of consistency in Guarantee of Origin approaches. The other thing that I would like to mention is that we're supporting the development of hydrogen hubs. And a couple of speakers have already mentioned the importance of locating demand as close to supply as possible in order to build up the industry in the initial stages of development. And this is what hydrogen hubs are about. We want to co-locate a number of businesses across the hydrogen supply chain in particular regions and help to scale up the industry and achieve economies of scale through this co-location of businesses. And many of these hubs would be, potential export locations in the future. So this is an important mechanism, I guess, for stimulating local demand, stimulating hydrogen utilisation, and eventually scaling up the industry. Some other important activities that we've got underway are a review of legal frameworks to ensure the legal settings are right in Australia. We have been undertaking a hydrogen infrastructure assessment to help us plan out our infrastructure, and also a lot of work on skills and training in Australia. On to the next slide, please. And this is the final slide. So finally, I wanted to talk about how international collaboration can help achieve can help address some of these common issues as well. I think it can help, international collaboration can help to accelerate technology development and help overcome economic barriers faster. It can strengthen linkages between industry and researchers and deepen research collaboration. And it can also help to build new supply chains and create export markets. Over the past 18 months, Australia has been developing a series of international partnerships. We've signed 7 now, and all of these feature hydrogen as part of the partnership. And these partnerships are already delivering outcomes. The previous speaker also talked about the hydrogen energy supply chain project that Australia has with Japan, and through this project we've demonstrated a shipment of liquefied hydrogen from Australia to Japan. So this is a very exciting project, and it's the world's first shipment of liquefied hydrogen, and it's been really important in demonstrating all of the elements of an export supply chain. So there is a lot of work to be done, and there are many challenges to overcome in order to see a large-scale global hydrogen industry emerge. But with governments and industries working together, I think there is a lot that can be achieved. And thank you very much for the opportunity to present today. I look forward to joining you in the discussion later on. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Ms. Rebecca Thompson. So thank you. And we see that Australia has a very clear vision as well as a plan and strategy for the future. And I think it is very interesting to see that Australia has initiated with building supply chain infrastructure for hydrogen in quite very early in comparison to other countries. So please stay online, and we'll get back to you after other presentations. I would like now to invite Mr. Faiz from Brunei Darussalam to deliver a presentation.
Thank you very much, Mr. Joko. My name is Faiz. I'm from the Department of Energy under the Energy Policy and Strategy Division. Previously, I was in the Renewable Energy Unit, but recently was transferred. So today I will be sharing you the Brunei's perspective on the hydrogen strategy and the current issues and challenges and perhaps opportunities that we face. So first and foremost, I think it is appropriate for us to sort of go back to where it really began for Brunei Darussalam and hydrogen. So as Mr. Yoshida-san mentioned earlier, that Brunei was involved with Japan in the AHEAD demonstration project, which shipped hydrogen in the form of MCH to Japan. So I believe that one of the key learnings that we have found from this is that the long distance transportation of hydrogen is technically viable, but we seem to find that based out of the two phases of the project, the cost is still relatively high, so perhaps maybe not commercially viable yet. This is a slide covering the key findings today, that although we do not have a national hydrogen policy per se, from this we are developing our national position on hydrogen. So in terms of production, the two pathways that we identified are from natural gas and perhaps from solar PV. So in regards to natural gas, currently the utilization of natural gas is being prioritized for pathways which have proven economic value, so such as LNG, methanol, and urea. On the other hand, for solar PV, we recognize that these solar PV projects require large areas of land and or water bodies, for example, in floating solar PV. And it is also really important to achieve the right scale of projects. And also another key factor is the electrolyzer efficiency. So the key challenges that today we face can be divided into two. So in regards to the domestic application of hydrogen, so we recognize that for domestic use in Brunei, we would need to invest in the infrastructure. So we see hydrogen as a new energy system that exists outside of the pre-existing one. So that is electricity and petroleum products. So currently the demand can be met with the existing type of fuel. So I believe from this, as a net energy exporter, it is important for us to achieve an export basis in order to get support for domestic applications from relevant government agencies in Brunei. On the other hand, when it comes to export, we need to consider that large areas of land for solar PV are needed. So we currently have some FDI, foreign direct investor interest, that they are doing feasibility studies. So hopefully next time there will be more fruitful news on that. So looking ahead for hydrogen now, one of the important things that we are doing is ERIA is assisting us with a green hydrogen study, which is leveraging off of the 2.3 gigawatt potential of solar PV, or an estimated 80,000 tons production per annum. Another thing I would like to mention is that we also collaborating with METI Japan on the development of a energy transition roadmap for Brunei. So this was an outcome of the Tokyo GX Week where our minister and METI's state minister agreed to work on and further collaboration. So in the shorter term to medium term as well, we exploring further on solar PV development. So last year we launched our first commercial tender for solar PV power plant, and from there we were able to see that relatively low cost production from really relatively low cost electricity can be generated from solar PV. So we would like to see if we can tie that in with electrolyzer technology to produce green hydrogen for Brunei Darussalam. So that is the end of my presentation. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you so much, Mr. Faiz. Yeah, it is also interesting to see that some countries have shown their FDI interest in developing hydrogen economy in Brunei Darussalam, and that Brunei is currently, yeah, like kind of elaborating its strategies whether to meet domestic demand or as well as to produce hydrogen, green hydrogen for export. And we'll get back to you later on. Let's now move to the third panelist, Dr. Liu from China. Please, Dr. Liu.
Hello, thank you for the introduction, Dr. Zhengko. Hello, everyone. I'm glad to have a chance to share the policies and the progress of hydrogen energy in China and discuss this further for other countries. Next slide. As you know, in 2020, President Xi Jinping announced the national targets of China to peak out CO2 emissions before 2030 and try to achieve carbon neutral before 2060. Next slide. Next slide, please. To decrease carbon emission in transport sector and industry sector and others, as a clean energy, hydrogen energy gets a lot of attention from Chinese government and the industry side. In past decade, Chinese government have released a number of policies related to hydrogen energy. There are policies about the development of fuel cell vehicles and the policy to use hydrogen as a clean energy carrier. And most of these policies paid attention to develop a technologies of production and storage and transportation of the hydrogen energy, and also the technology of the fuel cell and the parts. And China government and a lot of local governments also provide subsidies to purchase FCVs and build a refuel station. And in this March, the NDRC released a mid and long-term plan for hydrogen energy, hydrogen industry development. This policy shows the directional goals of hydrogen development in China by 2035. Next slide, please. In this plan, the strategic position of hydrogen energy are firstly an important part of the future national energy system. Hydrogen energy is considered as an important carrier for storage electricity generated by the variable renewable energy such as PV and wind power, large scale and in long cycle. And then hydrogen energy is an important final energy to achieve the green and low carbon transformation. And using the green hydrogen could reduce greenhouse gases emissions in transport sector, industry sector, and other sectors. And the hydrogen energy industry is also a strategic emerging industry and a key development direction for the future green and low carbon industry system. Will create new growth points for industry transformation and the upgrading. So, and in this plan, some development goals is announced. There are by 2025, the ownership of FCV will reach around 50,000, and the production of green hydrogen will reach 100 to 200,000 tons per year. And the use of the hydrogen will reduce 1 to 2 million tons of CO2 per year. And China will basically master the core technologies and initially establish a relative complete supply chain and industry system. And a hydrogen energy supply system focusing on the stage will focus on the hydrogen from the industry by production and also the hydrogen produced for the renewable energy. And by 2035, hydrogen energy industry system will be formed and covering both transportation, energy storage, and also industry use. And the proportion of the green hydrogen will be significantly increased. This is the main point of this plan. Next, I would like to share some information about the current status of hydrogen and MCV in China. Next slide, please. Hydrogen production in China was 33 million tons in 2019. More than 6% of the hydrogen was from the coal, and nearly 15% from natural gas, and only 1.5% is from the water electrolysis. And most of the hydrogen was used in industry sector as feedstocks, such to produce ammonia, methanol, and for the oil refining. Next page. The market of FCV in China grew rapidly from 2016. And in 2019, the sales of FCV reached nearly 3,000. But in 2020, the central government announced new policies for the demonstration of the application of the fuel cell vehicles by city groups. This will replace former subsidies about to the cars. So about 20 city groups have applied to this program, and due to the wait and see attitude of the local governments and the companies, the sales of FCV drops in the last 2 years. But by the end of the last year, the Chinese government announced 5 city groups such as Beijing, Shanghai, Guangzhou to be the demonstration city groups. So the FCV returned to rapid growth, and the production of sales of CV will significantly surpass 3,000 this year, maybe reach around 5,000 maybe. And by this September, the cumulative sales of FCV is more than 11,000 in China, and most bus and trucks. This is different from that in Japan or other OECD countries, and 270 hydrogen refueling station is built in China. So this is the information I want to share. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Dr. Liu. So I guess we also have listened to a very interesting current situation of China that is elaborating on also initiating the plan to meet the domestic energy needs in the country, and we see that China emphasizes its initial development of hydrogen by in road transport sector by developing fuel cell vehicles, and that looking at the presentation by Mr. Bianco from IRENA earlier, we see that China in fact has produced in 2019 almost half of the hydrogen produced in the world. Now we can go to the fourth presenters, speakers from India, Dr. Natarajan Rajalaxmi. So Dr. Rajalaxmi, please.
Morning, everyone. Yeah, thank you so much for giving me this opportunity to present our India's initiative towards hydrogen economy. And we have a good plans and strategies for the developing the hydrogen infrastructure, and through R&D and also through demonstration of hydrogen technology. As all of you know that the hydrogen is interstellar gas, we would like to get the hydrogen from the sun to the earth. That is, the hydrogen is the future, from solar or renewable to hydrogen. So we have demonstrated a lot of transport applications, from two-wheelers, three-wheelers, and four-wheelers, etc. And we have developed a good national hydrogen mission last year. Next slide, please. Yeah, if you look at the energy and emission status of India, we are importing a lot of oil, about 60 billion US dollar, and coal is about 56%, and oil is 30%, and it's likely to go to coal is likely to decrease about, decrease, and renewable energy right now it's only 4%. It's likely to go by about 49%, and similarly, coal also will be reduced by 56 to 12%. Natural gas from 6 to 16%. This is what we are expecting by 2050. If you look at the total emissions, so it's about 3.10 gigatons of CO2, and electricity is generating about 33%, while industry is 24%, and remaining heavy transportation, light transportation only 5%, and agriculture and others constitute about 33%. So this is the status with which our Prime Minister has announced a net zero emission of 2070. So next slide, please. So we have the opportunities for decarbonization in India in all the sectors, electrolyzers, fuel cells, etc. And you can see that we are going to be 100 years by 2047. So before it's independent, 100 years of independence, we would like to become energy independent. And currently, India spends about 160 billion of foreign exchange every year for energy imports. And India works towards a hydrogen strategy that is designed to construct a high-tech and low-carbon India brand. It is planning to do a world's largest electrolysis, green hydrogen generation, capacity of about 60 gigawatt. That means 5 million tons of hydrogen by 2030 for domestic consumption. This will help India meet the 500 gigawatt renewable energy market. And we also like to have a largest production of green steel at about 15 to 20 million tons by 2030. It's a pioneering effort to make green steel mainstream for the world. And the world's largest electrolyzer annual manufacturing capacity of 25 gigawatt by 2028, delivering affordable ones for India and the world. And we also like to have the largest production of green ammonia for exports by 2030, leading to about 100 gigawatt of green hydrogen. And we also invest in R&D about 1 billion ton, and that is what we are trying to do in the next few years. Next slide, please. We like to work on all the hydrogen value chains, the production by both green hydrogen, hydropower, biomass-based, and grey-blue hydrogen, and electrolysis fluid. And we like to address the carbon capture storage also, and transportation, gaseous, liquid materials, and ammonia. Basically, ammonia after dehydrogenation. This hydrogen will be used. The end users will be fuel cells, chemical production, refineries, and fuel cell electric vehicles, and steel and power glass production. Next slide, please. So what is the direction with which our national green hydrogen roadmap is going? By 2020 to 2025, we are planning to do the enabling green ammonia for exports and refineries, ammonia for fertilizer, and city gas distribution and blending. And then by 2025 to 30, we would like to go for green steel for exports and domestic green steel and heavy duty trucking. By 2030 to 2050, mostly seasonal storage and other energy applications, ships and airplanes. This is the overall strategy which India is planning to work. Next slide, please. So what is the projected price trajectory of solar green hydrogen production based on electrolyzers? This gray brand is about $2.5 per kilowatt, and this is the one with the blue hydrogen, most competitive blue hydrogen. What we are looking at is a band of green hydrogen from site renewables. So we try to reduce from about 5, right now it's about $5.5. We would like to go about $1.5. So this is the targeted price. By 2050, we are trying to look at it. And this is based on the variable various sources that I'll come to that later. Next slide, please. No. you look at it, why do we go for this type of potential green hydrogen? You have a lot of hydrogen demand in all the sectors. For example, by 2020 and 2030, most of the things we are working with the power and heavy duty vehicles. But right now we try to increase it to steel, methanol, ammonia and refinery, and the share of hydrogen keeps on increasing. You can see that this yellow ones keeps increasing. So it can grow by about more than fourfold by 2020, representing almost 10% of global hydrogen demand. Initial demand growth is expected from mature markets like refinery and ammonia and methanol, which are already using hydrogen as industrial feedstock and chemical processes. However, in the long term, heavy-duty trucking steel are likely to drive the majority of demand growth, about 52% of total demand by 2050. Next slide, please. So what are all the various drivers for hydrogen production cost to be brought down from $5.5 to $1 to $1.5? Initially, our gray hydrogen economics is we are getting the hydrocarbons, cost of the hydrocarbon, fossil landing cost and transportation cost, and foreign exchange if anyway we are importing the fuel, plus transportation and storage and others. But for green hydrogen, electricity cost, generation cost, utilization factor, and transmission distribution. And electrolyzer is once again capex and efficiency and degradation, plus transportation storage. So we are trying to central to global scale up of green hydrogen or the lowering of the renewable costs are expected to cost decline electrolyzers. Next slide, please. Yeah. So what is happening is what are the driving forces for the emerging economics of green hydrogen? So the renewable costs are coming down. This is in Indian rupees. Oh, no, this is in US dollars per megawatt hour. We are likely to the range for a LCOE and a range utility with solar and India wind energy and India solar energy. So we have looked at like this, and we also looked at the price of the alkaline electrolyzer and PEM electrolyzer, which is likely to come down from $1,400 to $200, and similarly PEM electrolyzer about $1,800 to $400. So this is the projected cost by ARENA and all the IEEJ, everybody, that $400 per megawatt hour, kilowatt is the targeted price. And what is the green hydrogen production outlook globally? You see that the brown and gray, it keeps reducing from 2019 to 2050, and blue and green shares increases by 2050. So India also is looking into the same ratio. Next slide, please. So because of this, everybody is aware that how much CO2 reduction we are going to do in all the industries in the total emissions from 2028 to 2050. So the refineries, ammonia and methanol, and they are going to reduce by about 1,600 tons of CO2 tons. And then finally, we go to the zero emissions. But in all these industries of heavy duty vehicles, steel, methanol, ammonia and refinery. Next slide, please. So what are all the opportunity for green hydrogen market? If you look at it, hydrogen share of product, this is methanol or chemicals. It is high cost and low impact. Ammonia, high cost and high impact. However, if you go for heavy duty vehicles and steel, it is low cost as well as low impact. And refineries, low cost and high impact. So what India is looking at is go for this refinery first, and then ammonia, then go for methanol, and then heavy duty vehicles. This is how we have arranged our system with respect to the opportunities for green hydrogen market. Next slide, please. So we have a lot of industrial facilities from throughout the India. You can see that the coal-rich areas, renewable-rich areas, and major refineries, and major fertilizer capacity and ports in this one. So you can see that the gray area is completely coal, and we have a lot of renewable in this area, that is western side. And so a lot of fertilizer refineries also, these orange color ones. So we'd like to capitalize all these industrial areas to tap the major hydrogen. Next slide, please. So what is that we are looking at is electrolyzer market is by 2020 we have about 20 gigawatt, but right now we are planning to set up the target up to 200 gigawatt of electricity, generating a billion of about $300 US billion, and there's about 226 gigawatt we are aiming at it. Next slide, please. So this hydrogen could be, we would like to use it for exports also. And what are all the challenges? The brief analysis shows that the techno-commercial challenges to international hydrogen trade and India's preparedness for it. While marine hydrogen trade is theoretically promising, many challenges persist. And the liquid organic hydrates and ammonia, the additional energy cost of conversion makes cost considerations necessary. Pipelines, on the other hand, remain underdeveloped even nationally. As of 26, there are only approximately 2,800 miles of dedicated hydrogen pipeline installed globally, with 1,600 miles in USA alone. This contrasts with over 130,000 miles of onshore oil pipelines and 3 lakh miles of onshore natural gas pipelines in the United States alone. So hydrogen blending is being proposed and utilized in national neutral networks, but has not been used in international trade yet. Due to their high capital cost and long lifetime, hydrogen pipelines are typically reserved for high volume flows. However, the issue of hydrogen embrittlement of steel can result in safety concerns and potential cost considerations. And what we are expecting at the moment is green hydrogen from India in 2050 could be highly competitive with hydrogen from USA and Australia, similar to ocean shipping, what we are doing it from Australia to Japan. By 2030 also in certain geographies, it will be competitive. That's what we are looking at it. Next slide, please.
I'm sorry, can you please summarize your
just one minute. Yeah. So in order to look at the potential of all the hydrogen, government is planning to develop 3 hydrogen valleys, that is completely utilized, where renewable energy is available, where water resources are available, and near the coastal areas, and where fertilizers are available. And this is the India map where some of the states have been identified to make the hydrogen valley. Next slide, please. Next slide. So there are a lot of R&D projects going on in the country, and these are all the major hydrogen projects in India. 500 megawatt electrolyzer, 800 kilowatt electrolyzer by L&T. So these are all the various projects right now in the pipeline. Next slide, please. Yeah. So conclusion. So India is developing technologies across the entire value chain and focusing on economic scale up performance to realize the hydrogen potential and to address the issue of climate challenges. And we have a lot of international collaborations also. So we would like to have your opinion on our strategy. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Raja Laxmi. So it was very interesting to see that India adopts different approach than the rest of the country. That we see that India would like to approach the development of hydrogen economy from the refinery sector, ammonia, methanol production, and steel. And India has initiated also with some demonstration and R&D projects. We'll get back to you later, Dr. Raja Laxmi. And now we go to the 5th presenters, which is Ms. Andrea Febi Misna from Indonesia. Yeah, Ms. Febi, you have 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you, Pak Joko. Very good afternoon for everyone. First of all, I would like to thank to ERIA and IEEJ for conducting this workshop and having me in this event. I'm happy to share with you about green hydrogen policy in Indonesia. I start with the strong commitment of government Indonesia to reduce greenhouse gas emission by 2030, whereas in our new enhanced NDC that already submitted to UNFCCC, it is become 32% reducing greenhouse gas emission in 2030 by our own effort and 43% by international support. And in 2021, Indonesia succeeded in reducing greenhouse gas emission from the energy sector by 17 million tons of CO2. It is a big challenge for us with the new target in 2030. We have to reduce 358 million tons CO2. And in terms of renewable energy potential, we have a huge potential of renewable energy. which is more than 3,000 gigawatt, dominated by solar PV, and also wind energy, and then hydro, as well as tidal and geothermal. From those huge potential of renewable energy, the implementation or utilization is still low. It's currently around 12.4 gigawatt. And we have target in 2025 to increase the renewable energy contribution 23%. And based on the realization in 2021, the achievement is around 12.2%. And for the long term, target for the energy transition, we have a target to get the net zero emission in 2060. And we have to reduce greenhouse gas emission around 33% reduction based on the business as usual. So we can see from this figure, we have to reduce around from 1.9 billion ton CO2 to 129 million ton CO2 in 2060. And some effort that we implemented is encourage the development of renewable energy and gradual retirement of coal-fired power plant, more efficient technology utilization, and switching from fuel to electricity, and also implementation of smart grid to overcome intermittency of variable renewable energy, and also utilizing hydrogen for the transportation sector and industry. And for the power sector, this is the figure in 2060, that the electricity demand in 2060 will reach 1,942 terawatt, which is dominated by the industrial and transportation sector. All electricity demand is supplied by 79% of renewable energy based on power plant, and 4% new energy or nuclear power plant, with the total capacity is around 708 gigawatt. And this is the roadmap for the energy transition. This is the roadmap for the energy transition. We already put some strategy in this roadmap, which cover the demand and supply side. In the supply side, we try to optimize the new renewable energy potential, in particularly variable and renewable energy like solar PV and wind, as well as nuclear power plant to meet the demand and replace the coal-fired power plant. In the demand side, we will gradually replace fuel-based vehicle with electric vehicle, and then develop a gas network, utilize biofuel that will maintain at 40%, and as well as developing the hydrogen. Green hydrogen will produce started in 2031 for transportation sector, and 2031 for transportation sector, and 2041 to replace the natural gas for high temperature heating process in the industry. And in our modeling, green hydrogen will not be used for the electricity, but will be used in the industry and transportation sector. Green hydrogen for the transportation sector is projected around 5% to 10%. Innovative low emission technologies such as CCS and also CCUS can be applied under certain conditions to existing fossil power plant to accelerate the emission reduction in the transition toward cleaner and greener energy. This is the figure of development of hydrogen in Indonesia. Currently, the green hydrogen development in Indonesia is still in the research and pilot project stage. not yet available on a commercial stage. For the preparation of hydrogen implementation, now we are developing a green hydrogen strategic document that covers the potential and opportunity, required policy and regulation, strategic effort, and also stakeholder mapping. There are some potential of green hydrogen project in Indonesia proposed by some private and state-owned enterprise, such as production of green hydrogen from geothermal by PT Pertamina in Ulu-Bulu Geothermal Working Area in cooperation with GIZ. The development of hybrid power plant, solar PV and also wind, plus a battery and hydrogen in Sumba Island, conducted by HDF Energy. And also some research and pilot projects now are ongoing to conduct some testing and also pilot project on utilization of hydrogen, such as cooperation between Toshiba, Japan, and Indonesia National Research and Innovation BRIN, and also Mitsubishi Japan with Pertamina, PLN, and PT Pupuk Indonesia, and also EHI Japan with PT PJB, PLN, on co-firing ammonia and hydrogen in gas power plant. Some investors also show their interest to build a hydrogen plant in Indonesia. And talking about the challenge, we find some challenge in developing the green hydrogen in Indonesia. Currently, we have no specific regulation on hydrogen. And as we know that the cost of hydrogen production from renewable energy is also still high. And also the infrastructure for the hydrogen is not developed yet. And also the supply, current supply still come from the natural gas. So in conclusion, based on the economic, and hydrogen can be developed in Indonesia after 2030, where the production price of green hydrogen is projected to be more competitive than fossil-based hydrogen. And green hydrogen production in Indonesia will be started in 2031 for transportation sector and in 2041 for the industrial sector. And Indonesia is open for green hydrogen market potential. And now we have mapping for the new capital city as one of our big project for the showcase of the hydrogen. I stop here. Thank you. I pass back to Pak Joko.
Thank you so much, Ms. Feby. So that it is quite encouraging to see that so many private companies as well as state-owned companies, universities, and also foreign private companies are currently starting to conduct demonstrating research, R&D, and pilot projects in Indonesia to develop hydrogen. And now we can go to the our sixth presenter, which is who is Mr. Ohira Eiji from Japan. So Ohira-san, you have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Joko, for kind attention. My name is Yoshira. I'm in charge of the hydrogen and fuel cell program. I'll just bring some information about the current activity in the hydrogen, mainly in the hydrogen utilization. Next, please. I'm sorry, this is overlapping this Yoshida-san's presentation, but this is a general or rough roadmap toward 2050, where our challenge is to increasing the hydrogen demand and decreasing the hydrogen cost. But there are several approaches in the roadmap. But so you can see this demand side. We have the several actions: the transportation and the power generation, the industry, some are also distributed energies. But in Japan, we have to transportation and the power sector already this early stage of the hydrogen demand. For next, please. Well, this show their current and status with hydrogen and fuel cell application. As you know, Japan success to launch the stationary fuel cell almost 10 years ago, 2009. It's accounted 450,000 units already installed in Japan household. For the mobility sector, as I mentioned, that it is the first application to utilize the hydrogen in the city area. Now we have the 7.5 thousand fuel passenger vehicles and 120 the fuel cell or dominant bus running and regularly mainly in the Tokyo area. we have the 160 and over the 160 public stations. For the next, please. Well, let me talk about the current NEDO activities. Well, NEDO is a kind of a governmental agency to promote national R&D program to achieve the METI's goal. Well, and we recognize that our commercial vehicle, especially heavy-duty vehicle, that's a key technology develop hydrogen demand in the transportation sectors. Well, we will start a kind of demonstration track and demonstration project in early next year. For the heavy-duty vehicle, for long-haul transportation, the small and medium vehicle for area delivery, and through this demonstration, and we will install the around 300 fuel truck. So next, please. We also collaborate with other country. This is one of our international demonstration project. We have collaborated with the Port of Los Angeles to for the demonstration and the fuel cell application. Well, and we will install the several fuel cell applications such as top handler and the country crane in the tractor, the DS truck, to demonstrate and the usability and the reliability in the fuel cell application. Well, the motivation is not only to promoting the climate change, decarbonization, but also tackling the reducing air pollution. That's a very important issue in the Los Angeles airport, Los Angeles port. Well, next, please. In the power sector, it's the key to sector to develop the enhanced hydrogen demand. Well, we started the kind of small size on the 1 megawatt hydrogen gas turbine. It's developed by the classic heavy industry for distributed uses. Well, we have there over the 5 years experience this hydrogen dual fuel gas turbine systems. Well, we have already succeeded running the 100% hydrogen to operation with a low NOx emission. Our next plan is scaling up to the several dozen megawatt scale, like a 30 megawatt and the hydrogen gas turbine system to be installed in not only Japan but also other countries. Well, next, please. And our next challenge is in the scaling up and the hydrogen gas turbine systems. Well, and Mitsubishi Heavy Industry have already developed the large-scale hydrogen combustor for the several hundred megawatt scale the hydrogen power generation. We just developed the combustor, but our next step is install this hydrogen dedicated combustor to the existing power station and cooperate with Japan's power industry. And our plan is start in the hydrogen power generation and early around 2030, combined with international hydrogen supply chain. Well, that's all my presentation. I'm very much thank you very much for your attention. I'm very looking forward to discuss with you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Oira-san. So yeah, it is always interesting to see that NEDO is working on several projects, including transport in California port. And yeah, we'll get back to you after the next two presentations. So we go now for the 7 speakers, which is Mr. Khairul from Malaysia.
Thank you, Mr. Joko. Good evening to all participants. My presentation today is on Malaysia Energy Policy 2022-2040 and what is the role of hydrogen inside the policy. For everybody information, this national energy policy was launched by our Prime Minister last month on 19 September 2022. And it will be our guide in achieving Malaysia net zero carbon aspiration. Okay, the tagline for this policy is the low carbon nation aspiration by 2040. By having this policy, the government of Malaysia is intended to undertake more proactive role to achieve the low carbon nation aspiration. Under this policy, Malaysia aims to take advantage in high potential growth in areas such as renewable energy, energy storage, low carbon mobility, and also hydrogen economy. The next, sorry. Okay, under this policy, there actually 4 trusts was formulated under this policy. So, but the hydrogen role appear in strategic trust number 2. So the title of the trust is to capture growth, market opportunity, and cost advantage for economy and people. We plan and hope to unlock the opportunity and long-term competitive advantage of emerging hydrogen economy. The key objective of this strategic trust is to unlock the value of GDP contribution and job creation from hydrogen economy, enhance export income, and also support CO2 emission reduction target. So under this strategic trust, there are 5 initiatives that we have formulated. The first one is, before this, there is no government agency leading the issue and development of hydrogen. Therefore, under this initiative, the government decided to given the task to spearhead and oversee the end-to-end development of hydrogen economy to Ministry of Science, Technology and Innovation. So this agency was given a task to oversee and develop the roadmap. So the second initiative is that agency that I have mentioned just now. They were responsible to develop a long-term hydrogen roadmap. The agency actually has already started the study on the roadmap, and the roadmap was called Hydrogen Economy and Technology Roadmap. It is expected to be completed by end of this year. The third initiative is to optimize the potential hydrogen production location to make it more competitive, as Sarawak, as you know, that has already produced a small-scale green hydrogen using electricity from hydroelectric, and they have a potential to expand the capacity. The fourth initiative is to develop a domestic hydrogen ecosystem by doing R&D on technologies and also commercialization capabilities. And the last one is initiative is to develop regulation and to ensure the safe, secure, and equitable rollout of hydrogen production, transportation, and use of application. At the moment, we do not have any specific regulation or law regarding hydrogen usage. So all of these initiative details is actually will be further deliberate in our roadmap, which is being currently developed and expected to be completed by end of this year. So this is one and only hydrogen demonstration project in Malaysia. So Sarawak Energy, as I mentioned just now, they have surplus hydroelectric energy. So they have developed what they call integrated hydrogen production plant and refueling station in Sarawak, which have capacity of 130 kg of hydrogen per day. So that hydrogen was used to power the hydrogen bus. This is only demonstration project, so the bus is free for citizens of Kuching. With that, I end my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Khairul. Yes, I'm interested to visit Sarawak to check the bus and to ride the hydrogen bus. I think that's very unique in ASEAN as a project. Yes, and I think this workshop is very timely as Malaysia has just promulgated the new energy policy that includes hydrogen. We'll get back to you later, and I hope our speaker, Mark Pickup, is still there from New Zealand. So please, Mark, you have 5 minutes.
Can you see me?
Yes.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. It is my pleasure to present to you New Zealand's hydrogen policies, projects and roadmap. Next slide. First, I'd like to set the context for New Zealand's hydrogen policy. Next slide. New Zealand has a highly renewable electricity system of around 82%, with an aspiration to reach 100% renewable by 2030. We also have goals to achieve 50% of total final energy consumption from renewable energy resources by 2035 and net zero emissions by 2050. Next slide, please. Hydrogen is a key part of New Zealand's energy strategy, which is currently under development, alongside a development of a gas transition plan as we reduce our reliance on natural gas, a project to decarbonise industry and remove the use of coal, in particular from industrial heating, and the development of a regulatory regime both for offshore wind and for hydrogen. Next slide, please. In late 2019, the New Zealand government released its hydrogen vision, a project which was then to be followed by our hydrogen roadmap. In 2021, we released modelling, which indicated that by 2050, up to 8% of New Zealand's energy use would be met by hydrogen. This modelling also indicated that the most likely applications within New Zealand were heavy transport, industrial processes, such as substituting green hydrogen for grey hydrogen from fossil fuel used in industrial processes. New Zealand, we believe, has the potential also to be competitive as a hydrogen export to Asia, at least up to 2030. It gets difficult with the modelling afterwards to predict where the prices will go. Hydrogen used domestically, our modelling also indicates is quite sensitive to transportation costs, which often mean that it favours local production on site for many uses. Next slide, please. So to summarise our policy area, our policies are a net zero economy by 2050. An emissions reduction plan has been created to help guide our carbon reductions. An energy strategy is under development, and our hydrogen roadmap also is under development as a key part of our energy strategy. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to talk briefly about some of the hydrogen projects underway in New Zealand. Next slide. So the map that shows the two islands of New Zealand and a number of small-scale demonstration projects which exist at present in New Zealand. For example, there's one producing green urea as an input to fertilisers by a company Balance Nutrients with IRENA Energy. This has been partly funded by the New Zealand government and also involves the Mitsui Corporation of Japan. There's a hydrogen refuelling stations being established in the North Island of New Zealand by a company called IRENA Energy, also in working along with Mitsui Corporation. A 1.5 megawatt hydrogen pilot production plant has been established at a geothermal power station in the middle of the North Island, which is a joint venture between the Tuapakai Maori Trust, an indigenous organisation, and the Obayashi Corporation of Japan. There is also trial work underway by one of our local gas distributors on hydrogen distribution through their pipelines, which is partly funded by the New Zealand government. That's just a sample of some of the small demonstration projects underway. There are a few others involving buses and trucking in some areas. At the moment, there is only one large-scale project under consideration. In the bottom of what is our South Island, there's a project called Southern Green Hydrogen, where two of our large electricity generators are investigating the development of a 600 megawatt export scale hydrogen plant. At this point in time, they are at the process of selecting between two potential development partners. Next slide, please. Now I'd like to sort of go on to talk about New Zealand's hydrogen roadmap. Next slide. So New Zealand has not yet completed a hydrogen roadmap. It's a work in progress. Our hydrogen roadmap was announced as part of our emissions reduction plan in May 2022, and it builds on the earlier work we've done, such as our hydrogen vision, international cooperation ongoing with various countries, and a project to deal with our hydrogen regulatory settings, which is happening at the moment, and the modelling I mentioned earlier. Our roadmap is intended to set government's objectives for the development and use of hydrogen in New Zealand to meet decarbonisation and other objectives. It will signal a pathway to achieving these objectives to provide investors and community certainty. It will build on existing government work and funded projects to date, and it will be adaptable. Next slide, please. So where we're at on our project is initial and targeted engagement is happening now with stakeholders in November 2022, which is quite close actually. We're in the process of setting the objectives and the approach we're to use, and then we'll develop our initial roadmap, or the interim one, will be developed between November 2022 and mid-2023 as a first phase before consultation with stakeholders, and that will be agreed in mid-2023. The second phase will happen over 23 to 24, where we will then consider, on the basis of the interim roadmap we've developed, what potential government interventions are needed to support objectives and plans that we've developed in the roadmap. It will then form part of our overall energy strategy, which is happening in parallel by the end of 2024. So our timeline for things is still sort of 1 to 2 years out for completing our hydrogen roadmap. But, and I suppose as partially indicated, we do have a belief that New Zealand will be a hydrogen exporter, but we haven't yet worked through what the demand is domestically and what the relationship is between domestic use and export in terms of what sort of government support and what sort of investment is needed. That will be what we will be developing in our roadmap. So before closing, I'd like to finish by reiterating the comments of some of the previous speakers on the importance of international cooperation in developing a hydrogen economy and a hydrogen market. Thank you. Finish.
Thank you so much, Mark. So in the meantime, then we see a lot of demonstration and research and development projects in New Zealand, but New Zealand is also in the middle of elaborating its hydrogen roadmap. So you would like to follow this kind of development closely, Mark. So yeah, we'll get back to you. So now I have several questions that I would like to ask. So I hope Ms. Rebecca Thompson is still there and staying online. I have one question for Ms. Rebecca Thompson from Australia. You have shown us that there are in fact international collaboration that Australia has started to perform with several countries. But I just would like to know, how do you expect that this kind of collaboration might be able to assist to overcome challenges associated with hydrogen utilization?
Yeah, thank you for your question, and it was quite fitting that Mark ended on that point as well, I think, because I think this is, obviously an important point to cover in this forum where we've got such a wide representation of international speakers here, which is really great to see. But on that point, so I think there's a couple of areas that I think where international collaborations really can really help drive the industry forward, and is really critical in a couple of areas as well. The first one that I'll mention is certification. So this is an area where I think international collaboration is critical. There's talk of whether we need common hydrogen standards, common methodologies, and things like that. I would say that, of those things, we absolutely need to have common methodologies for calculating emissions from hydrogen production, but also hydrogen transport, storage, hydrogen production, as well as the transport and storage of the hydrogen as well. So that's across the supply chain until it gets to the end customer. Countries, if they have different standards, I think that can work, so long as you know that everyone's measured their hydrogen emissions in the same way. So if Australia tells you there's 2 kilograms of emissions with this kilogram of hydrogen, and Japan tells you there's 2 kilograms of emissions with that kilogram of hydrogen, you need to know that they're comparable, that they're measured the same way. And this is, the market really needs this to work, I think. So, and again, I just want to highlight the work of IPHE in this area, and many of the countries involved in this forum are involved in that work. But I'm very happy to, for countries that are not, who are interested in learning more about it, you know, very happy to talk to other countries about the work that we're doing there on carbon accounting methodologies for hydrogen certification. Other areas, obviously, that are really important for collaboration. So I think, obviously, international collaboration on research and development is important to accelerate technology development and overcome economic barriers and strengthen linkages between industry and researchers. We've got a number of projects underway in that regard as well. We have a program that our science agency, CSIRO, have been running. And they've sent a few delegations around to some countries recently, and to Japan in December, I think. And that's all about strengthening research collaborations between countries and between researchers in industry. They've also done these reports as part of Mission Innovation on sort of research opportunities in 10 selected countries as well. And they're up on the Mission Innovation website if you want to take a look. And I think finally, like collaborating on the demonstration, well, the study and demonstration of supply chains is another really interesting area. So in that regard, like Australia's, we've had a project with Germany called High Supply, which is a feasibility study where we've looked at aspects of a potential supply chain between Australia and Germany. And that's been really useful for kind of you know, simulating additional work along that supply chain and demonstrating, well, not demonstrating, but in a practical sense, but, you know, highlighting some of the issues and opportunities, I guess, from a potential supply chain. And then, of course, we've had the hydrogen energy supply chain project with Japan, which has actually been a demonstration of a supply chain. And I mentioned that in my presentation as well. So I think these areas for international collaboration are really useful to help overcome some of the barriers associated with the industry that are common globally and will help drive a global market and decarbonisation opportunities. So thank you for the question. I will.
Thank you, Rebecca. So yes, so common methodology development and standardization, as you say, and then of course linkaging between research and industry, and the latest is the supply chain and demonstration. They are four things that the international cooperation can have to support the overcoming challenges with hydrogen utilization. So next, thank you, Rebecca. So now next question is to Mr. Faiz from Brunei Darussalam. What do you think is the biggest challenge for hydrogen utilization in Brunei?
Thank you, Mr. Joko. So I think when it comes to hydrogen utilization in Brunei, if it was up to the Department of Energy, I think we would say yes. But in Brunei, I think we still need to convince our other stakeholders in the government, especially. So I think I believe that this is one of the reasons why we are taking the stance of, if we can have a stable production base of the hydrogen and be able to export it, then we can gain more value, and then from there we can, from that added value, we are able to invest in the necessary infrastructure for the end use in Brunei. I think I also echo with the previous statements on the international collaboration as well. So how Brunei has been involved in hydrogen in the first place is due to this international collaboration. So I believe that I'm both hopeful and optimistic that with further collaboration, Brunei can explore not just the production for hydrogen, but utilization in the country as well. I also really take note of what Mark said earlier on the that hydrogen price is heavily sensitive to scale of production, electricity price, transportation distance, and method. So I think if we can find the sweet spot in all of that and find the balance, then hopefully we can have hydrogen utilization in Brunei. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Faiz. So yes, to reach a stable production base and then to improve international collaboration or to strengthen international cooperation, as well as to reach the production balance will be the key. Thank you so much for your excellent answer. And now I would like to move to Dr. Liu with my question. So only one question. I appreciate if you can reply briefly. Is it possible for China to achieve the target of 50,000 fuel cell vehicles by 2025 in the medium and long-term plan? That is my question.
Thank you, Dr. Zhou Gu. And recent years, I think in China, main concern about the FC market is over-investment and repeated construction and the competition in low level. So most experts think that there are overcapacity of production. So the market size mainly depends on the demand side. And compared to the traditional cars and the EV, the cost of FC is still high. So the main driver for the demand is the plan of the local government. So according to the plan released by the 5 city groups I mentioned that selected by the central government for the demonstration application, the sum of the FCVs of their targets is more than 40,000 FCVs by 2025. And besides this 5 city groups, there are still a lot of local governments have announced their plan and will maintain their plan to develop FCV. Some of these targets, the number of FCV in China will be more than 100,000 by 2025. So considering the actual performance of the past plans by the local government, I think the targets of the 50,000 FCV by 2025 is very likely to meet, and it could be exceeded in a large probability. I think that's my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Liu. So so the demand side drivers, executed by the local government with support from the central government will be the key to reach that, as in the case as electric vehicles in China. Thank you for the excellent answer. And now I would like to go to Dr. Raja Laxmi. Just one question. Maybe you can answer to me briefly, Dr. Raja Laxmi. As India would like to start with greening the hydrogen use of industrial sectors, what do you think will be the acceptance from the industrial player, such as refinery and steel producers, about this plan? Because I know that industrial sectors are really price sensitive. You are still muted, Dr. Raja Laxmi.
Right, we are starting from industry because we have a very good built up industry, refineries and ammonia synthesis, chemical process, and at the same time we don't have that much hydrogen infrastructure for transportation applications. So where we have the energy to work, so that is why Indian government is looking at the industrial belt and industries, and very good amount of hydrogen requirement is there in that sector also, compared to transport sector and power. So that is why we are looking into industrial, and most of the industries are also participating in the green hydrogen production. So the net zero emission we would like to address from the industry point belt initially.
Thank you, Dr. Raja Laxmi. Yeah, that is excellent. That to involve industry sector in green hydrogen and in the process of energy transition in India. I just would like to now to Ms. Fabi. My question is for Indonesia. So in terms of regulation, what have been promulgated by the government so far with regard to the hydrogen use and development, and especially in the use of hydrogen in power generation? Can you explain that briefly?
Okay, thank you. Actually, for the regulation specifically, we have not yet a regulation on the hydrogen, but based on our roadmap for the net zero emission, we already mentioned that we will also develop the hydrogen for the decarbonization. And currently, we have some cooperation on testing and also pilot project for using the hydrogen in power generation. In our previous modeling, actually, we included the hydrogen for the power plant, but based on our new calculation that we will need the more investment for hydrogen in power sector. So in the new roadmap, we didn't put the hydrogen for the power generation, but just for the transportation sector and also for the industrial sector. But it doesn't mean that it's not close to opportunity for the power sector, because it's still based on the assessment and also the study that what we do currently. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Fabi. So that currently there is no specific regulation for hydrogen, but maybe we can expect that in the future regulation will be there, and it will also facilitate penetration of hydrogen use also in power sector, I hope. And now go to our sixth presenter, Mr. Ohira Eiji. Ohira-san, I hope you are still there. So my question is that for you is, how do you think that hydrogen cost production will decrease in the future, in function of geographical situation, for example, in East Asia or in Southeast Asia? How do you think about the price development of hydrogen production?
Yeah, and there are many aspects to reduce the hydrogen costs. And one of the key issue is scaling up. You know, we have the we enjoy the scaling merit, so that's our Japan's approach is and scale to scaling up or develop and enhance the hydrogen demand, and to develop the large scale international supply chain also. And other thing is which is the hydrogen sources. No, hydrogen can be produced from various resources, but we need to find an unused energy mainly. And one of the options is we are now constantly using the brown coal. The brown coal is difficult to use widely, and also renewable. And there are so if there are many a lot of the excess electricity, it's also the unused energies. Well, and there's many again. There's many aspects, but we need to combination the scaling up and the unused energy, and also technology development is needed.
Thank you, Oira-san. So the key words are scaling up, and then the use of unused resources. That was one of the topics discussed in the previous phase of this hydrogen study, and then technology development and excess electricity, probably from the curtailment from the renewable electricities, if I'm not mistaken. So thank you for the answers. Now I go to Mr. Khairul from Malaysia. So my question is that, in relation to the new national energy policy of Malaysia, does Malaysia have any plan to incorporate in its hydrogen ecosystem as fuel for electricity generation in the future?
Okay, thank you for the question. To answer that question, I would say yes, but not in coming years, because in our plan on energy transition, so we have to switch from coal to gas and renewable energy. So, but our renewable energy potential in Malaysia also is very limited, especially in Peninsular Malaysia. So the next step is to decarbonize the natural gas, or we have to replace natural gas with hydrogen. So maybe not now, but we have planned to incorporate at least maybe 1% hydrogen first in our next future gas power plant. which is maybe in 2029 or 2030. So we are now considering that for the next power plant, we call it should be hydrogen ready, so that first maybe you can burn natural gas, but you can actually mix with hydrogen. That's my question, my answer. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Khairul, for the excellent answer. So, the most probable step to take for Malaysia, according to you, will be co-firing of hydrogen with natural gas, starting with low share and then increasing the rates of mix. Thank you. And my question for Mark from New Zealand. So, just one for you, Mark. So, what are the specific challenges for New Zealand to implement hydrogen economy?
So thank you for the question. So New Zealand faces many challenges in introducing a hydrogen economy. At the moment, a lack of a clear pathway because we haven't developed our strategy or roadmap, regulatory barriers, and financing or scale barriers. We're addressing the pathway or direction problem through developing a roadmap as part of our energy strategy, which I mentioned before. We aim to complete this work in 2024 to provide clarity and direction to investors. We have completed already a review of our regulatory issues, and the next phase of this work is to start work on a program of legislative change. In investigating these regulatory issues, we discovered that hydrogen covers at least 6 different areas of regulations, from marine to land to transport to safety, and so there was quite a lot of regulations and legislation that need to be addressed. Yeah, this touches in particular on the area of aligning international standards, which is one area where we're keen to see cooperation and that continue and develop. New Zealand has worked on our hydrogen standard project in APEC, and we're keen to see similar work continuing. Changing to finance. To date, New Zealand government's only supported a small number of hydrogen projects financially, mainly through low interest loans. Most of our current industrial assistance is directed at electrification to move industry off fossil fuels, such as we have a large project which we call GIDI, or Government Investment in Decarbonising Industry, which is a $600 million New Zealand fund to essentially electrify plants or industrial plants, particularly to get them off coal. This probably reflects the fact that we are a highly renewable electricity nation, and so our use of where we will use hydrogen is still something we are still coming to grips with, will be part of our roadmap. But we recognise that if we are to grow our hydrogen economy significantly, the government will need or may need to fund some major projects. That is an issue we will consider in our roadmap. Though I do note that the larger hydrogen plant I mentioned earlier, or sorry, the potential hydrogen plant I mentioned earlier, down on the bottom of our South Island of 600 megawatts electricity usage has been developed at this point in time completely by private investors without government assistance. So if they do decide to proceed, it will give us quite a good indication of how such investors see a potential hydrogen market developing from New Zealand. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Mark. So yeah, of course, that is we would like to learn from New Zealand experience, then how to finance hydrogen, how to find business plan or business development plan that is the most suitable way to fund hydrogen project developments. And I think it is one thing that we learn all, that regulatory barriers like the involvement of many areas or multidisciplinary sectors that we need to consider while developing roadmap. Thank you, Mark. And I just would like to have take one question from online participant. This is from Faisal Syabani. Just would like to read the question. I would like to ask to Miss Phoebe, actually. Yes, thank you, Ms. Phoebe. It is a good presentation. And from the roadmap that you share with us, it seems like it is now that government Indonesia is more optimistic about the hydrogen development plan than previous and in the previous time. He mentioned March 2022. What are the factors that makes this change that change the tone from the previously less optimistic to more optimistic in the hydrogen development?
Okay, thank you, Pak Faisal. Yes, I mentioned before that actually the roadmap is very dynamic. We improve based on some input and also some study and assessment that conducted by ourselves, also from our partner. And in the previous roadmap, actually, hydrogen will be implemented in the power sector. And as I mentioned before, that based on our review, it will increase the investment that we need. So it's why in the current modeling, hydrogen will be implemented in transportation, first in transportation, and after that in industry. And if it's possible, we also would like to implement it in the power generation. As we know that implementing of hydrogen in power generation is very, very expensive. And if you see the roadmap, maybe it's also the dividend number, because in the previous roadmap, we have to reduce the CO2 in 2060. The rest of the CO2 will be in 400 million ton in 2060. However, in the new roadmap, based on our modeling, we asked by the Ministry of Environment to reduce more to achieve the net zero emissions. So in 2060, for the new roadmap, in energy sector, the emission only 129 million tons CO2. So it's why some of the projection is become higher than the previous one.
Thank you. So in fact, it is the requirement that is more severe now. Yeah. Okay. Thank you so much, Ms. Phoebe. And I think we need to close this panel discussion session, despite of highly interesting topics. I think we can continue for 3 hours or more about this different perspective, with one main goal of achieving hydrogen ecosystem or economy in the region. Thank you for all excellent panelists for your participation and for all the participants. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Joko, and all the panelists for sharing your expertise and insights with us today. Before we continue to our closing remarks, we need to take a short break to rearrange the stage. Thank you. Distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your patience. To conclude today's event, I would like to invite Professor Jun Arima, a Series Senior Policy Fellow for Energy and Environment, to deliver his remarks. Professor Arima, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for your kind introduction. My name is Jun Arima, Senior Policy Fellow for Energy and Environment of ERIA. And first of all, I'd like to express my sincere gratitude to all the participants for this seminar, in particular, the keynote speakers and also panelists in this session. And about 1 year ago, in November, in Glasgow at COP26, a very ambitious Glasgow Climate Pact was adopted and aiming at 1.5 degree temperature stabilization together with 2050 global carbon neutrality. And that was, how can I say, heralded at the mark of ambitious first step towards carbon neutrality. And 2022 was supposed to be to making a giant stride to that direction. But now, currently, world energy situation is very much turmoil situation caused by energy crisis since last autumn and also Ukraine war since this February. And energy security has become the top agenda for energy policymakers of the many countries. And, all the countries are now preoccupied with coping with very much high energy prices and also securing stable supply to their final consumers. In Europe, in order to cope with energy shortage, they are actually burning coal. And also in Asia, because of the LNG purchase rush by European countries, LNG price is increasing rapidly. That could potentially delay the fuel switching from coal to natural gas. So this is all the challenges. And currently, I think the current energy crisis is quite often compared with energy crisis or oil shock in 1970s. But the situation is much more complicated and difficult. And now we have to cope with energy crisis while pursuing the ambitious goals for carbon neutrality. So to this end, we need to utilize all the energy fuels, all the energy resources, and all the energy-related technologies. And in ASEAN, they have put forward carbon neutrality goals towards 2050 or 60 or 65 prior to COP26. And this is very much a laudable first step. But what matters is what concrete roadmap towards that ultimate goals. So, and that pathway is likely to be diverse according to nationally specific circumstances. So, in this September, at the EAS Energy Ministers meeting, they acknowledged the importance of achieving realistic energy transitions through utilization of various alternatives and emerging low-carbon technologies and systems, such as fuel ammonia, hydrogen, and biomass, nuclear energy, clean coal technology, and carbon capture utilization or storage. So hydrogen is clearly one of the many means for achieving carbon neutrality while achieving energy security. And our organization ERIA, in collaboration with IEEJ, Institute of Energy Economics of Japan, has conducted the cost optimal, the roadmap, technology optimization scenarios for achieving 2060 carbon neutrality in the ASEAN region as a whole. And looking at the outcome, clearly hydrogen and ammonia will play an important role, in particular after 2030. And but how to use hydrogen in various sectors, the situation is different, as presented by Mr. Kimura in the morning. And in certain countries, the hydrogen is mainly used for fuel, and in some countries, hydrogen is used for power generation. And also, there are countries which is suitable for large utilization of hydrogen, while some countries may not. And also in terms of import and export, the status could be also different. Some countries are 100% domestically producing hydrogen, and some countries are importing hydrogen from overseas. So our situation is very much diverse. And today we have heard presentations from 8 countries: Australia, Brunei, China, India, Indonesia, Japan, Malaysia, New Zealand. And all the presentations were very much informative, and they summarized their current state of actions for promoting hydrogen society. And then we have detected some common challenges, such as how to create demand, how to reduce cost through scalable economy, and how to secure necessary infrastructure, and also regulation. And many speakers also identified importance of international collaboration. So I think this workshop is one example of the international collaboration for sharing good examples and common challenges. And as Joko said, the question and answer session after the presentation by 8 countries were too short. So maybe I think next time we could focus on certain topic, for example, regulation. Then we could have a bit longer discussion time, because we are in a very much initial stage of developing hydrogen society. But as indicated, we have many common challenges. So maybe from next time we could pick up a certain aspect of the common challenges and to have deepened discussions. So again, thank you very much for all, including participants via online. And I learned a lot from today's workshop, and would certainly continue this workshop and also international collaboration for sharing best practices. So thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Professor Arima, for your closing remarks. We would like to convey our deepest gratitude to everyone attending this event via WebEx and attending in person in Kobe, Japan. We are very honored today to have our prominent speakers sharing their views and expertise with us. On behalf of the organizing committee, thank you all for coming and supporting this event. For the speakers joining us online, kindly stay on for a few minutes after the event ends to take a group photo. The EAS Hydrogen Workshop is now closed. Thank you and enjoy the rest of your day. Thank you.